Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I hope you had a great weekend. We start with just informing you we're having a Mind Speak session this Friday at the Movenpick, the newly minted Movenpick, which is near the Oswald Centre in Westlands. We're hosting Kenjen and Rebecca, who's the MD, and we have a panel discussion. I was just there this afternoon talking about the event. You're most welcome. Do respond to us via Twitter or via email if you're interested in attending. And then we've got an event happening tomorrow, Wednesday evening, where we're hosting Finterra's Chief Executive Officer. This is all about a blockchain venture aiming to modernize Islamic endowments and much more. Again, this event is at the Movenpick, but that's for Wednesday night. If you have an interest, please holler. Home Thoughts, a beautiful sunrise worth sharing at Destination Watamu by Elizabeth Rowe via Instagram. Indeed, it's a lovely photograph. This is as well. Trekkers and porters cross a suspension bridge in front of Mount Amadablan near Pangabochi in the Everest region. I came across this tweet: if someone makes you happier, make them happier. This is David Yarrow, the shimmering heat of the high sun, the mirage behind the giraffes and the composition itself have combined to create an almost surreal image. It is an animal Times Square in the heat of East Africa. I've never had this number of giraffes all within 100 yards of me. I like this photograph from Will BL, which is Lady Nuyua, a lioness. William S. Burroughs, a paranoid, is someone who knows a little of what's going on. A psychotic is a guy who's just found out what's going on. And I'll come to why I'm including this. I think this is one of the best opening scenes of any movie. And this is from Boogie Nights, the opening sequence, Steadicam operator Andy Shuttleworth and the film director P.T. Anderson. Dark movie, but just have a look at the opening scene. Political reflections, my piece over the weekend and the third in just over 6 months was again about North Korea. A new history starts now, an age of peace from the starting point of history. The events that took place on Friday at the truce village of Panmunjom and during the Inter-Korean summit were breathtaking for the Hollywood optics. The opening shot of Kim Jong-un surrounded by a phalanx of North Korean officials, later replayed my weekend piece, and the third one about North Korea in about 7 months, starts. A new history starts now, an age of peace from the starting point of history. The events that took place on Friday at the truce village of Panmunjom and during the Inter-Korean summit were breathtaking for the Hollywood optics. The opening shot of Kim Jong-un surrounded by a phalanx of North Korean officials, later replayed as Chairman Kim sat in his presidential vehicle, surrounded by his ninja bodyguards, was almost as good as the opening sequence in P.T. Anderson's Boogie Nights. This was cinema of the highest level, which is no surprise when you consider that Kim Jong-il, the father, was obsessed with cinema and amassed arguably the world's largest personal film collection, over 20,000 bootlegged 35mm screening copies. Kim Jong-il also had a penchant for Hennessy parody cognac, and for 2 years in the mid-1990s he was the world's largest buyer of Hennessy parody cognac, importing up to $800,000 worth of the stuff a year. Kim Jong-il began his career as the head of the state's propaganda and agitation department, and it's clear that Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo Jong, who holds the same role and evidently handles all the optics, is a chip off the old block. Friday was tip-top geopolitical optics. Mike Pompeo, the newly minted US Secretary of State, his predecessor was fired via Twitter, had visited Pyongyang the previous week and pronounced that the young North Korean leader was a smart guy who's doing his homework. Marwan Bishara was a little jaded by the optics and tweeted, "When pictures are the news and the symbols are the facts, cliches become truths and media turns into propaganda. For now, we are short on facts, long on images, and hence any perspective is likely to be speculative. Globally, we're being played in a game of nations which could produce more of the same or different." The smartness of the young Chairman Kim was also seen in his impromptu move, where Kim had moved cross into North Korea, a request which was apparently spur of the moment, impossible to refuse, but evidently planned. It's been a whiplash period, however. Only in September last year, North Korea was in its Rocket Man phase, firing rockets all over. It is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed, once or twice guessed, and refused to believe that everything always collectively had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. That's Danilo describing the trajectory of a rocket with the serial number 0000 in his book Gravity's Rainbow. And here we are now, the message Kim Jong-un left on the guest book: "A new history starts now, an age of peace from the starting point of history." This handshake business has become a Malcolm Gladwell-like virus. Moon asked Kim when he would be able to go to the north, and Kim said, "Do you want me to come now?" according to South Korea's presidential spokesperson. The question remains as follows. Kim Jong-un can hardly forget what happened to Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi, both of whom met their ends after being defanged. So my question remains, what security guarantees can Trump provide to Kim that convince him to denuclearize? Offering up bulletproof security guarantees is the equivalent of threading the needle. Dollar strength of late has been sapping support for safe haven assets like gold and the yen. In the event that geopolitical tensions continue to ebb, we should see both safe haven assets drift lower. The South Korean Kospi index is plus 1.01% in 2018 and has room to run higher on a peace dividend rally. The issue is now what happens with Iran, where the US president is seemingly determined to upend an agreement he probably has not even read. This is the front page of Saturday's Rodong Sinmun newspaper in North Korea by Martin Williams. The North Korean people have shown the leaders at the border, Kim Jong-un stepping into South Korea. This is the handshake and the unplanned moment when Moon stepped into the north briefly. That's from the North Korea news org. And I said that was genius geopolitics and optimal optics. This is the opening scene when he comes down the stairs, surrounded by his ninja bodyguards. Again, very good optics. Which took me back to that quote from 1997, "Information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics," the author suggests, "but will be spawned, like any Hollywood drama, out of raw emotions. Emotions rather than strategy will set the terms of information warfare struggles. Here, this is from RT, this is the full footage of Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un arriving at a border village for this historic summit. Yo Jong apparently handles all the optics from what I can gather, and of course their father, he was obsessed with cinema. North Korea's KCTV broadcasting yesterday's summit for the first time. And this photo of the year, a snapshot from last night's summit dinner. That's pretty impressive. Perhaps a Trump joke. Korea CDS is tightening on headlines. You'd see a further substantial tightening happen there. And in this infographic, The Economist shows what North and South Korea would gain if they were reunified. John Bolton said Libya denuclearization model for North Korea. Karl R.E. Marx, yes, that worked out so well for Gaddafi. Have a look at this. This is Fox and Friends. You see in one photograph the start of the interview, and at the end you see the faces at the end of the interview. In his compelling new book, Tyrant, Shakespeare scholar Stephen Greenblatt describes Richard III as a pathologically narcissistic ruler who hates the rule of law because it gets in his way and because it stands for a notion of the public good that he holds in contempt. I thought this was powerful. I think being African is not a question of the color of the skin. It's in the mindset. His Excellency Paul Kagame at the Ibrahim Foundation event in Rwanda. Rouhani tells Macron the Iran nuclear deal is not negotiable. Yesterday I tweeted, what happens next? Iran, does Kim change the dynamics? Emmanuel Macron does not seem to have persuaded POTUS about a deal he has not even read. And I also said Obama hedged his bets because he was worried the kingdom could easily morph into a peacock throne. However, Donald Trump has gone limit long the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, MBZ, and Bibi Netanyahu. In this photograph, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, is greeted by the Saudi Foreign Minister Adel al-Jubeir upon arrival in Riyadh. MBS apparently said to Jewish leaders, the Palestinians rejected every offer that was given to them in the past decades. They can take what is offered and go back to negotiations or shut up. And that goes back to something I wrote in November last year, the capture of a 32-year-old king. And I was talking of his capture by Bibi Netanyahu, which explains that kind of remark, because there are not many leaders of Saudi Arabia who would be brave enough to say that kind of thing about the Palestinians, who of course resonate as a very big issue in the Islamic world, and for good reason. Amber Rudd is the fourth cabinet minister to resign in 6 months. Fallon, Patel, Green and Rudd. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar last trading at 121.03. Let's have a look at the other ones. Dollar index 91.52, Japanese yen 109.25, Swiss franc 0.9877. The pound 137.36, and that's lost a lot of ground in the last few sessions. Aussie dollar 0.7550, India rupee 66.62, South Korean won 1067.44, the Rial 345.79, Egyptian pound 17.6905, and the rand is firm a little to 12.30. Dollar index, I'm looking for 93.50 in point of fact. That 88 stock has held well. Euro dollar, last trading around the 121, the figure. I'm looking for a breakdown below 120. Jeff Bezos reveals what it's like to build an empire and become the richest man in the world, and why unconditional love is so important for taking risks. Amazon's going from record to record. Sainsbury and Asda will remain separate brands after a deal that combines Britain's second and third biggest supermarkets. Interesting development. WTI crude oil, last trading at $67.30. It's kind of trading a little bit heavy now, I feel. Gold, 1360.50. And dollar strength is weighing on that. Southeast Asian stocks are on track for their worst rout since 2016. Have a look at this chart. The military doesn't advertise it, but US troops are all over Africa. When US troops were ambushed in Niger last October, the widespread reaction was surprise. The US has military forces in Niger. What are they doing there? Yet in many ways, the Niger operation typifies US military missions underway in roughly 20 African countries, mostly in the northern half of the continent. The missions tend to be small, they are carried out largely below the radar, and most are focused on a specific aim, rolling back Islamist extremism. The focus of the US military operations is basically African solutions for African problems, Sir John Campbell, who follows Africa for the Council on Foreign Relations. The US, he added, was largely helping with intelligence and surveillance. The US is reportedly has one drone based in Niger and is working on a second one. It's active in Uganda, where they were looking for Joseph Kony, Somalia, where they're fighting the al-Jubeir, Djibouti, only permanent US military base in Africa, then China muscling in as well, Libya. The US has carried out periodic drone strikes as part of a campaign aimed at the Islamic State. In 2013, I was saying increasingly I see the US deploying hard power in Africa as a way of tilting the pitch and staunching the Chinese advance. Dos Santos to stand down as head of the Angola ruling party, that's a big step. And finally, the curtain closes on the Dos Santos rentier state. Party's executive said in a statement that it approved the candidacy of Comrade João Lourenço as president of the MPLA. Former Malawi President Banda has returned home, saying she's ready to prove her innocence. South African all shares down 3.45% this year. Dollar versus rand last trading at 12.30. Nigerian all share is up 7.85% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index, second only to the Ukraine, is up 34.56% this year. Uganda's government is proposing a tax of 100 shillings, 3 US cents per day for at least some users of social media such as Facebook and WhatsApp. Here in Kenya, yields on the 10 and 30-year Eurobonds increased by 10 basis points each to 6.8 and 7.9%. An 8 handle makes that 30-year bond a buy. On a year-to-date basis, the shilling has gained 2.8% against the dollar. Strong performance. The Nairobi all share is up 4.84% this year, but has dropped 8.694% since hitting a record high on April 5. The market here is currently trading at a price-to-earnings ratio of 14.6, according to Citon. NSE 20 is up 0.31% year-to-date. Land in the Nairobi metropolitan area recorded an average capital appreciation of 3.7% in 2017, compared to the 6-year CAGR of 17%, so we've already come off the boil. Cement consumption dipped for the first time in 17 years to 6.2 million tons, owing to depressed demand in the construction sector. Intercontinental Hotels has taken over the management of Jomo Kenyatta-based Hotel Lazizi Premier, which is set to rebrand to Crown Plaza. Home Africa owes us money, and we're in the process of giving instructions to our lawyers to pursue our money, Jonathan Seeks of Tamarind Management. They've just reported full year results, which I'll look at tomorrow. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm grateful.